Hey everybody, hello and welcome to the 11th house live stream. It's a little bit late tonight, so I apologize for sort of being on the late side of things. And if you're here and you're hanging out, that's great and I appreciate it. I had a baseball weekend this weekend with my son, and so I got a bit of a late start tonight. But we'll be on here for about an hour or so and try to bring you what's happening astrologically as it relates to this world, this very strange matrix we're currently living in. And I'm going to be doing something a little bit different tonight. I went and saw Blade Runner last night, Blade Runner 2049, and I hadn't seen a movie since Guardians of the Galaxy. I tend to like science fiction for a number of reasons. One of which is because, well, I just love the sets, I love the special effects, and in the case of Blade Runner, I really love the overall just kind of ambiance and sound. But it's a very, if you're really looking for clues as to where things are going, it's kind of a disturbing movie in a lot of ways, and I'll get into some of that tonight. I'll also be looking at the chart of the moment and giving you an astrological forecast for the week, and also a couple of celebrity charts like we normally do here tonight on Sunday nights. So let me jump right into this and let's bring the chart of the moment in, and that way you guys will be able to see kind of where we are astrologically. Let's just jump right into things here. I had a whole quart of ginger and coconut ice cream tonight. It was really good, I have to say. It was really good. I liked it. Okay. Ah, man, what is this now? I've got all these charts to choose from. Which one am I doing? See, I normally get in here and I wind up labeling all this stuff. Let me see if this is it. It's real quick. It should be it. Yeah. I sound like that guy from Office Space. Yeah. Why don't you just go ahead and bring me up those performance charts. Okay, here we go. So let me do this, and here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here is your chart of the moment. If I had some special effects, I would get into it. Ah, look at that! We got Gemini on the ascendant. We're going to be talking about Gemini tonight. And I might even bring in some Gemini material as it relates to Las Vegas, which tends to be a very Gemini event. And there are some very strange kinds of pieces of information around Las Vegas, which I'll try to bring into the mix here. Let me just line this up a little bit more so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, so this is the chart at the moment. You can see that we are at 22 degrees Libra, and there's Mercury right there, conjunct Libra. Let me fire it up so I can actually see it too. I'm sorry, it's Venus at, so we have, I thought this is the chart of the moment. Oh yeah. Okay, there it is. So we have the Sun at 22 Libra, Mercury at 25 Libra, and Jupiter at number 1 degree Scorpio. I haven't felt that change yet from Jupiter in Libra to Jupiter in Scorpio. Although people with early degree Scorpios really should be feeling more expansive and to some degree kind of, I would say, more spiritual in some ways. I mean, it may just bring out more of your scorpionic darkness, but I would tend to think that there would be some level of depth and psychic and psychological potentiality, but also expanding kind of who you are. And sometimes expansion is very benevolent, and sometimes it's just more. So here we are, we have Jupiter at 1 degree Scorpio, and technically speaking, it is still in opposition of Uranus. But it's kind of moving away from Uranus, so it's moving out of orb. And the big Jupiter-Uranus opposition, which really took place in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, that's sort of abated. You know, we will have the Sun-Uranus opposition coming up here very, very quickly, because Uranus is currently at 26 Libra, so within 4 days we'll have a Sun-Uranus opposition. That's a really interesting, so it's going to be so we got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So right around Wednesday, Thursday, that's when I think things could get pretty edgy, you know? It's like, generally speaking, when the Sun is in Libra, people, I think the energy, at the very least, tends to be one leaning towards some level of cooperation. Now, you may have to drill down into your chart to find out where that is, but that's kind of the, you know, the uva of Libra, is to find some level of cooperation, win-win, you know, synergy, mediation, some form of diplomacy and balance. And when we have the Sun-Uranus opposition, the best laid plans of mice and men, all the diplomacy and all the feel-good just gets tossed right out the window. Because, and I love Libra, I've got 3 planets in Libra, don't get me wrong, I enjoy Libra, but Uranus sort of scatters that to the winds, and right now it's doing its magic on Mercury, which is maybe even more sort of susceptible to Uranian kind of data bursts across the chart than perhaps the Sun, although Mercury is exalted in the sign of Aquarius, so there tends to be a bit of a symbiotic relationship between Mercury and Uranus. I think maybe perhaps the Sun and Uranus might be a little bit more difficult, excuse me, because the Sun is ruled by, of course, well, Leo is ruled by the Sun. So it's always going to have a kind of this dynamic tension in whatever sign it's in, opposing Uranus, because Uranus is the rule of Aquarius, the opposite sign of Leo. Pretty basic astrological math. Let me just tilt that up a little bit. Yep, right there. Okay. So what does that mean for the week ahead? Well, generally speaking, when we get into the language and the modality of the opposition, the energy is greater as we move closer and closer towards exactitude. And the energy begins to dissipate as we move away from it. So we could feel, to some degree, a sort of mounting tension. And if we're trying to maintain some kind of a balance in our life, and that balance is not supposed to be there, guess what Uranus will do? It'll just drop a bomb. It'll blow it up. So that's the nature of Uranus. And there are a number of people who have Uranus and Libra that are born during the Gen X generation, who have had Uranus sweeping across their natal Uranuses over the course of the last couple of years, and which would be Uranus and Libra, and that will continue to occur until Uranus moves into the sign of Scorpio, and in which case it will still continue to, I would say that the Gen X kids kind of dissipate around 1984, 85. That's when Pluto and Scorpio comes into play. So we'll still have a fair amount of kind of Gen Xers who have Uranus and Scorpio versus Uranus and Libra, still go through the Uranus opposition. And what happens when we go through the Uranus opposition in our lives? Well, what happens is that if we have any areas in our lives that are stagnant, that are crystallized, that are stratified, that are chained to some kind of process of entropy, well, guess what Uranus does? It explodes it. It brings creative energy into the life of the individual. And as a result of that, sometimes it can also bring chaos. It can bring feelings, it can bring intensity, it can bring action. Sometimes events will occur in a person's life that all of a sudden have a very pivotal kind of moment in time for the individual. And next thing you know, they're pivoting off into some other direction. This is an important transit that takes place, and it takes place right around the age of 43, 44. It's just kind of in that same zone as the Saturn opposition. So these oppositions are about creating kind of new models and new formats as a person moves into, I would guess, middle age in some ways, and away from youth and away from kind of the last vestiges of sort of the Saturn cycles. So this is, it's not the last, but I mean, they've moved out of the Saturn return. They've gone through one Saturn quarter, and the Saturn opposition gives the individual a sense as to seeing kind of where they are and what's going on in their lives. And if they need to make a change, the change will happen. It'll happen. It'll generally happen of its own accord, whether the individual needs to make it or not. They may want to stay with whatever it is they're doing, but sometimes circumstances will arrange it. And this is the nature of the outer planets. Now, I want to be really clear about something. So when I talk about these things, right, they are not necessarily indistinct of what I would call God, okay? It's really important to understand. And that these spheres of influence are actually supposed to bring us closer and closer and closer to our realization of God in our lives. Now, that may, the Christian may say, well, all you have to do is proclaim that you follow the life and birth and of Jesus, the one and only Son of God, and you don't need anything else. I would say that there's probably nothing wrong with that, and some kind of devotion in that way would be very, very important. But at the same time, how I see these things is I see them as being kind of the celestial arbiters of things that we need to go through. And generally speaking, we go through these things in our own way. And so what happens, somebody will go through something and they'll pray about it, and sometimes they'll get an answer and they'll see a miracle or experience a miracle. And other times they'll just have to wait, and there's layers of patience that are involved, and so there's it's either you get the miracle or you wait, and so it's one or the other, right? It's either the dispensation of faith and holy grace, or you wait and then you get patience, and it's all in God's time and not yours. And so what I try to do as an astrologer is I try to give you some insight into kind of timing, so that as a human you can see perhaps that there is a divine plan at work as it's unfurled by what's happening around us, correct? That's how I see it. You may disagree with me, that's your prerogative. So when we get into the Saturn opposition, because we're going to be talking a lot about Saturn here over the next couple of weeks, and on the 28th I'm doing a live webinar over on Astrology, all about Saturn. And man, are we going to go deep into Saturn. It's going to be big. Well, I've got to fill 3 hours, but I have a lot to say about this. Especially, some of the things I'm going to have to say about Saturn are not going to be things that people will like. Some of the things I'll say about Saturn people will resonate with, and they'll say, okay, I get this. How can I build this into my life? And some of the things I'm going to say about Saturn are not going to be all that pleasant, because one of the other things that we are dealing with here is this notion that astrological cycles aren't just a way for us to understand the divine in our lives or the sacred in our lives, but it's also used as a model and timing for people that are well versed in these systems, astrology being one of them, so that they can unfold events that take place and operate in sync with astrological cycles. And we've seen this again and again and again and again. And we're going to see it with Saturn in Capricorn, because one of the things that we most recently witnessed is the fact that California just went through some crazy fires. I mean crazy fires. Fires that, you look at these structures, trucks, homes, I mean, they're melted. They're not just burned, they're melted. It's like the rebar, like the fires are so hot, it just completely sort of torque the metal, right? Just torque the iron. So it's just, it looks like a sculpture that's kind of, halfway created and distorted and just kind of, rising up out of this cement box, right? And it's just bizarre because many of the vineyards have not been touched. They haven't been touched. So how can you say, how does this happen? How do people experience the local version of kind of spontaneous combustion with their real estate? I mean, there's only a couple of different answers for this kind of phenomenon. One is that there might have been something quite wrong with Pacific Gas and Electric. The other is that perhaps these buildings were targeted, these homes were targeted, these neighborhoods were targeted, and the targeted neighborhoods would not in any way, shape, or form affect the surrounding areas like the vineyards. So that would mean that there would be some kind of particle beam weapon or some kind of weather weapon or something that would cause areas to spontaneously erupt like that into blazes of fire. 50 people or 45 people have died in those fires. The air quality is terrible, really terrible. So what happens to those people? What happens to their homes? Just like what happened to the people in Houston. What happened to some of the people in Florida? Not all the people. So what happened to these people and their real estate? They're forced to move. Where do they move? Well, guess what? This is not going to be the only scenario where all of a sudden we're going to see large swaths of people moved off of their land. Because the whole idea here is to move people into the Agenda 21 and the Agenda 23 cities. This is what's happening. And there's a whole, look, we don't have time to go into this, but trust me, this is what the plan is. This is the Saturn in Capricorn plan. Because Saturn in Capricorn represents what? It represents the government. It represents the zenith, the power of government. And not just this government in this country. It is global governance. It is the UN. It is the treaties that we've set up. It is the charters we've set up. Right? It is the agreements that we've signed. Just like Agenda 21. The Rio Accord, Agenda 2030, the update to that. So what will happen? Well, we'll move people into the pack 'em and stack 'em. And this is going to be something that we're going to see a lot of moving forward. Because people will not be allowed to live in open space. Won't be allowed. And if you do live in open space, number one, it will be exorbitant. So only the super rich will be able to live in open space. And number two, if somehow you find a way to kind of get off the grid, it's going to be very difficult. There won't be any services. You won't have fire. You won't have ambulances. You'll just have to kind of deal with it on your own, which may be better than what's coming, which are the green prisons. That is Saturn in Capricorn. And they're going to make mandates basically saying this is much better for you. Trust us. You'll be happier. You'll have all your needs taken care of. You just hang out here. Oh, look, there's a brew pub at the bottom of your 250 by 250 square foot apartment. I watched Blade Runner 2049. I know exactly what's coming. So let's get back to the chart of the moment. There's Gemini on the ascendant. We'll be talking about Gemini tonight specifically as it relates to the movie Blade Runner. Oh, and of course, there is Pisces on the midheaven and Neptune on the midheaven of tonight's show. Oh, no, I take that back. I gotta tilt my head. That's Aquarius. Sorry, it's Aquarius. It's tilted a little sideways. Neptune is in the 10th house and Chiron is there. So this is a good night to talk about visions of the future, which is what Aquarius is, and I've just been speaking about that. Moon opposite Neptune. Well, I'm being really pragmatic with that Virgo moon now, aren't I? So tomorrow, what do you want? So tomorrow morning when you get up and you go to work, you do your Virgo thing, and you punch your clock, punch your time clock, or whatever it is that you do to mark that you've shown up, or maybe you just show up and at a certain point in time somebody starts looking around for you, and if they don't see you at that particular point in time, then you know that they know that you're not really showing up. So when you do go to wherever it is you're going tomorrow, or even if you stay home and show up at home, because a number of people out there do that. A fair amount of my clients actually stay at home, work at home. You know, sometimes you have to work a lot more when you're at home. Trust me, I know this part. But you'll be starting off on a Virgo moon this week. So the Virgo moon it's a tough moon in some ways. It's mercurial, it's critical. It can be nurturing, but it needs a task, right? It needs a task. Like you've got to take care of something. You've got to take care of somebody. It's usually out of some overriding need to, you know, stem the chaos, the tide of chaos in one's life on an emotional level. So the Virgo moon is nervous. So we'll start the week off with a bit of nervous energy. Have 1 cup of coffee perhaps instead of 2 tomorrow, especially because as we get closer into the orb opposing Neptune, we might actually be misconstruing how other people are feeling, or we may misconstrue our own feelings towards others with a Moon-Neptune opposition, making it more difficult to kind of read how other people are feeling about us. And then what happens is that we pull away from the potential of feeling and joining and dissolving, and we move into this kind of critical nature of the Virgo moon. But what we really want to do is we really want to join. We don't want to just sit at our desk in the morning alone with our own cup of coffee or a tea. We want to be around the water cooler. We want to talk about football, or we want to talk about whatever we talk about when we go in to work on Mondays, because that's the Moon-Neptune opposition. Neptune dissolves, Neptune joins, Neptune creates a sense of oneness. The Moon Virgo says, you know what, I'll take my cup of coffee alone at my cubicle. So you can figure that out. The Moon is trining Pluto, and as we move through the phases of the Moon over the next 24 hours, it will get closer and closer in trine, in which case the emotions will become very intense for people. And not intense in a bad way, it could be intense in a good way. So one of the things that Virgo and Virgo Mercury and Virgo Moon does is it's engaged in a level of what? It's the D word, it's discernment. So the Virgo moon can be overly discerning, if you know what I mean. Sometimes I've seen people with Virgo moons in their lives and their charts be so discerning and so discriminating that they find it very difficult to bond with somebody emotionally, because the Virgo moon is demanding in some ways. But over the course of the next 24 hours, as it moves closer into trine with Pluto, those kinds of feelings, those kinds of standards and demands can be transformed. And these things are generally available to all of us depending upon where the moon is in your chart, right? I mean, so, you know, I don't know about you, but when I get up in the morning and I do my thing, I do my best to live what I call a spiritual life. And one of the things that happens every now and then is, I fall from grace a little bit. I don't do as much as I could or as well as I can. But the whole idea is that everything is God, right? And everything that we do gets us closer and closer and closer, theoretically, to that realization. Or if we're further away from being in connection, being aligned, in contact with the divine, then we have to find out how to get back home. You know, for some people, it would be, hey, I'm going to pick up a Bible, I'm going to read a few verses of the Bible, maybe that'll bring me back to center. You know, for other people, it would be like, well, what did I do to kind of be on the outside of my own experience? Where did I betray myself? Where did I betray my higher self, right? So in some ways, this falls into the rubric of this Virgo moon, which causes us to be sort of objective in some ways, or maybe too objective with our own emotional content. Now, some people will say, well, it's lends itself towards real subjectivity. No, I would say that that's really the Piscean moon, which is deeply subjective. But the Virgo moon always wants to kind of objectify the emotions and say, where am I? What am I doing? What did I do wrong? Am I, you know, how come my mother doesn't love me? How come my mother just doesn't accept me? For all you people with Virgo moons, you know exactly what I'm talking about. By the way, I actually grew up with 2 people with Virgo moons. One born on a full moon, or just after a full moon, who's a Leo, and moon in Virgo's just right after that Leo sun, so new moon. And my mother, who was a Pisces, Virgo moon, born on a full moon. So I had the spectra of these 2 parents with the Virgo moons. You know what they used to do? I'll tell this is what happens when two people with Virgo moons get together. They bond through being critical around other people. I used to see this with them all the time. They would start off with these new friends, or they start off with like a new club or something. I remember one time they joined this Porsche club. My father bought a Porsche. He's going to join the Porsche club. So they joined the Porsche club. And they loved it for a while until all of a sudden they saw the glaring imperfections of everybody in the Porsche club. And they did this with every relationship and every friendship that they were part of. It was always the glaring imperfections. And once the glaring imperfections kicked in, what do you think they did? Well, they bonded around, oh wow, this person's like this and this person's like that, and we don't need these assholes, or we don't need this crap in our lives. And then they veer off because their combined Virgo moons became so critical of their emotional experience with others that they bonded together, and and they agreed. Almost always they would agree that it was not an optimal experience for whoever it is that they were hanging out with. Very strange stuff. I saw that all the time. If you have a Virgo moon, try to expand your emotional horizons. I'm just saying. Although it could be very good, I'm sure that there's a shared. I mean, look, moon in astrology. Here's a little astrology lesson. Moon in astrology for two people, if it's in the same sign, they've got such a great chance, at the very least, of being friends, and perhaps even better, that they could live together, they vibe together, they experience things emotionally in a very similar way. So if you find somebody who has a moon that's in a similar sign, or the same sign, then it's generally a pretty good connection, pretty good match. Venus is in Libra. Oh, I like this. We're going to Venus in Libra for the next 28 degrees, and eventually it'll conjunct my moon. What do you want? What do you want? What are you looking at? That's my familiar. Anyway, I like Venus in Libra. It's a great Venus. It's wonderful. Mars is kind of lagging behind now. We had the Venus-Mars conjunction, which I really liked. And Mars at 25 degrees, so it's going to be on my sun in the next 4 days. Wow, I'm looking forward to that. What? Anyway, Venus in Libra is, I think, one of the best places, obviously, for Venus, because it's in its own sign. So at the very least, we might have the opportunity to get along for a while. Wow, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be awesome? There's a guy by the name of Nate Boyer. I think that's his name, Nate Boyer. He used to play center for the University of Texas, just across the city. And he was a former, I think, Army Ranger. And he started college late, and he became a long snapper for the University of Texas. Very interesting guy. Doesn't weigh that much. Probably weighs about maybe 225 pounds at the most. But he's a long snapper, so he snaps for punters and field goals. He got a ride. He got a ride to Texas being a long snapper, Army Ranger, and he's been connected to football players for especially Seattle, because I think Seattle brought him in for a free agent sort of tryout. And he wrote an open letter to Colin Kaepernick and Donald Trump, where he urged the two of them to get together. I actually think that that's a really good idea. See, that's a Venus and Libra kind of moment in time. I think that'd be great if the two of them could hang out, talk. Who knows? I mean, maybe I think it would have to do with which one of the Trump clones gets sent over there. That's my sense. They'd have to bring in the friendly Trump clone versus the mean one. Maybe there'd be the blue. What did Dick Gregory say? The red tie clone versus the blue tie clone. Send in the red tie one, the one that Ben Carson likes. I think that'd be an interesting thing. What if they did get together? What if they sat down? What if they hashed stuff out? Wouldn't that just flip people out on both sides? That'd be kind of a cool Sun-Uranus opposition. It's kind of like these guys who play for the Golden State Warriors, who were supposed to go to the White House, but they didn't want to because Trump's a racist, and Trump's a bigot, and Trump is hateful, and on and on and on and on. It's like, why don't you just, get off your ass, go to the White House, use the opportunity to actually talk with the guy. Maybe it would be interesting. Maybe it would be enlightening. Maybe it would be enlightening for Trump Maybe they would change his life, and he would change their lives, and all of a sudden, the world become much smaller, you know. But no, they're not going to do it. They're not going to show up. Whatever. If I went to, I tell you, even if Obama was in the White House and I had a chance to go there, I'd sit down, I'd go. I'd totally go. I'd ask him a bunch of questions. I would ask him I doubt if he'd answer them, but I still have an opportunity to ask him some questions. Right? They should do it. They should take advantage of it. They won't, though. Mercury is in, with the Sun-Mercury conjunction, and Mercury's moving towards Jupiter, so people will be more verbose. Even when Mercury goes into Scorpio, there will be more verbosity, especially when Mercury goes into Scorpio. People will talk about their feelings. It may be a really good time for people to address their fears, because we're not going to get this transit. I think we might get it one more time. No, I don't think so. I mean, I'd have to go to 2018, because Jupiter goes into Sagittarius in October, and I don't think Mercury catches up. So, we're not going to have this experience again for another 10 years with Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. So it'd be really, this is going to be what, in 5 days, right? So, talk about your fears, address your fears, get into them, create a safe space so that you can, all fears about death anyway, it doesn't really matter. But sometimes they have very friendly or very, how should I say, familiar kinds of guises and masks that it puts on, covering up the fact that it's all really about checking out of this place and leaving people and things behind. That's what it's about. Sun-Mercury conjunction, and it's all in a sextile with Saturn. So we can have a very good dialogue about Saturn. Boy, too bad. It would have been a great time to do my webinar this last weekend. But that's not going to be the case. I'm hoping that Mercury, let's see, today's the 15th, so it's 13 days. It'll be in Scorpio at that time. So it won't be conjunct Saturn, it won't be conjunct Neptune either, or I'm sorry, Jupiter either. But I will do my best to be able to, you'll have to come into my inner sanctum to experience the webinar with my Mercury and Scorpio in my 12th house. However, that said, with the Sun-Mercury conjunction sextiling Saturn, it's also a really good time to be very clear about your thoughts. If you have something that you've wanted to get off your chest to a Saturnian figure, like a politician, or you want to sign a petition or a politician, this could be a really good time. It might even be very, very potent and helpful. I remember one time, I've told this story before, but it's a funny story. I was living in Southern California, and we had this guy who was our representative, Randall Duke Cunningham. He was one of the heroes, so-called heroes of the Vietnam War, if there are any heroes in the Vietnam War. John McCain is supposed to be here, but he's clearly not one. Anyway, Randall Duke Cunningham was my representative in San Diego. Of course, it was easy for him to get elected because I believe he was either Air Force or Navy, I forget which one. But, we're surrounded by naval bases, but, all the bases are there. We have Miramar, we've got the naval base down in Coronado. We have the Army base, which is like, in Vista, right around that area. So, anyway, this guy got elected for a long time. And one time, well, it wasn't just one time, it was when the Iraq War was starting up, and I didn't like it. I sent him a letter. I said, look, come on, you know there's no weapons of mass destruction, and this is going to cost us money. It's going to get us involved in a foreign conflict, overseas conflict. We're going to be there for a long time. Why don't you just vote no on this thing? Of course, I got the standard pat answer. But he responded to me. So then my kid was born, and he'd sleep at night, right? Like, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night, we'd get these like gunship helicopters flying over our little housing tract. I mean, so low that the house is like, shaking, vibrating. Like, wow, my kid would wake up. And this would be, every couple of weeks. Like, why are they doing this? So I sent him an email. I said, hey, look, man, all you got to do, you see these helicopters, they're flying right over our house, really low. And my kid sleeps at night. And then wake my kid up and upset him. Look, all you got to do is take those helicopters and fly them about 8 miles east of here, okay? Just get them out of a suburban area and fly them out over open land. You can use more fuel, spend more money, and tax the taxpayer more. It's like, okay, whatever. Well, guess what happened? That guy, Randall Duke Cunningham, he got busted for, guess what? Taking bribes from lobbyists, from, excuse me, arms dealers, arms suppliers, and he did stupid shit with it. He bought a gold-plated toilet, and you can look it up. You'll find all the dumb stuff he bought with it. And he got busted. He went to prison, and then his wife divorced him as soon as that happened. So now the dude is in prison, lost his wife, lost his high-flying ways, getting his palm greased. You see, that's what happens when you don't listen to your constituents. Randall Duke Cunningham crossed me too many times. Anyway, look, it's a funny story, but I'm telling you, hey, look, we got a Sun-Mercury conjunction, sextiling Saturn. If you wanted to get your point across, if you wanted to, and in Libra, you can be very fair and very rational about the whole thing, correct? Yes. But you can also hit those Saturnian institutions and tell them to wake the fuck up. We got a Mars-Neptune square to Saturn, so perhaps we might be a bit too emotional with these Saturnian kinds of institutions. So instead of being emotional and intense and fiery, be cerebral, be balanced, be logical, be reasonable, because the sextile says you get further with it. The square says you get shut down. That's from me to you. Mars is trining Pluto, but it's a very wide trine and kind of moving off of the trine with Pluto at this point. But over the past week or so, Mars has been in trine with Pluto. And that would have been a really good time for a little ooh la la, if you know what I mean, with a Mars-Pluto trine. At the very least, you can tap into resources inside of yourself that are deeper. And remember, these are all part of the divine, manifestations of the divine. So if you are going through tests and trials, a Mars-Pluto trine will give you the endurance to get through those tests and trials, perhaps a little bit easier than others. Venus is squaring Saturn, so there's a bit of formality right now with that Venus-Saturn square, and that's going to continue to happen. Well, not really, because Venus gets closer and closer to that sextile too, so it's only right now. What else do we have? I think that's about it. That's about it. We have Gemini rising as the chart of the moment, as you can see. So we're going to get into some Gemini material, because last night I went to go see Blade Runner 2049. So let me get rid of this, and we're going to talk. We're going to move into Blade Runner 2049. There we go. Alrighty. So let me punch up a little graphic here, so ye can look at it. I'm having visions of Escondido, where I used to live. I'm time traveling. Here we go. There's Blade Runner 2049. I don't like that edge. It's a funky edge. Anyway, let's get it to right there. Okay. So let me. Okay, I'm gonna do my best to break this movie down without busting out the spoilers. Okay. The original Blade Runner film supposedly took place in the 2020s. And it was, of course, an offshoot of a story called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. And the first Blade Runner was really mind-blowing and kind of one of those pivotal cultural moments that launched us into this whole kind of cyberpunk world in some ways. The beautiful thing about Blade Runner was that it was kind of steampunky, but it was also very futuristic at the same time. I mean, Ridley Scott just completely nailed it, and sort of the dystopian aura of Los Angeles at a point in time in the future where everything was dark and rainy. It was like, it was like cinema noir on Neptune or something like that. That's what it was like, film noir on Neptune. And you had three remarkable characters in that movie. You had Harrison Ford, and then you also had Edward James Olmos, and then Rutger Hauer. And Rutger Hauer, of course, was the lead replicant, or they were cyborgs, is what they were. And these cyborgs or replicants were used for off-planet exploration and labor. So because they could live for a long time and because they didn't need any oxygen to breathe, they were able to endure the rigors of space travel. And so by doing, they were able to see things that other humans had never seen. So it was a very interesting kind of premise. And in some ways, they were much more enlightened than their human brethren. And Rutger Hauer, who had a few other interesting movies, really, in my estimation, peaked as an actor, as kind of a iconic force in that film. When Harrison Ford went on to have, of course, a very, very substantial career in a number of movies. But both the two of them, and Edward James Olmos, who plays a very enigmatic kind of blend of a kind of an Asian, sort of Mexican, Latino kind of, it was almost like he was doing this, this zoot suit version. It's kind of, Chinese futuristic zoot suit version. Very fascinating, made all these kind of origami characters. But then you have kind of a smaller subset of characters in the first Blade Runner, with Daryl Hannah and Sean Young, just to name a few, as being the beautiful replicants. So here we have another version of Blade Runner. It is set further into the future, and those replicants who were produced by the Tyrell Corporation were being hunted down because they would live. They had no extermination date. And there was a new brand of replicants created by Jared Leto, who plays the kind of the modern version or the current version of Tyrell and creates replicants for more off-planet adventures and also to populate the Earth for any number of things that the replicants can do, work, give you pleasure. And the thing that you don't quite understand about, or which you don't know, is who's a replicant and who isn't a replicant in the movie. Ryan Gosling plays Kay, who is the sort of the updated version of Harrison Ford. And what's fascinating about Gosling, of course, he's a Scorpio, and he's great at being this kind of Gary Cooper-like figure. Although you wouldn't equate Ryan Gosling with Gary Cooper, but in many ways he is, because he doesn't say it a lot in his movies, and Blade Runner is no exception. But what we see is we wind up identifying, and I'm not going to give you a spoiler right now, but Ryan Gosling is a replicant, okay? So we didn't know whether Harrison Ford is a replicant or not. In the first film, in the director's cut, we get a sense that he is a replicant. In the theater version, we think that he's a human who has fallen in love with a replicant, aka Sean Young, and you can see Sean Young in the montage, or the montage of the photos. But what's fascinating is that all of a sudden we identify with a cyborg. It's like there's a guy playing a cyborg in the lead role, and he's actually exhibiting human emotions. frailty, doubt at times. And there is a process that takes place in the movie where he begins to doubt whether or not he's even actually a replicant, that he might be, who knows, Pinocchio. And I don't want to get too much into it, but what I want to bring to the table is that the central theme of the film is that there was a child who is a miracle, okay? A miracle. And the miracle is that the child was born out of the womb of a replicant, which is supposed to be impossible, right? Supposed to be impossible. But in Blade Runner 2049, it is not impossible. In fact, it is the central theme of the movie. So if that's the case, then we're looking at this kind of idea and theme of what? Of a virgin birth in some ways, because no other replicant had ever done that before. You know, so it's really fascinating. And the virgin birth of the Virgin Mary, who is actually Rachel, who is played by Sean Mary Young, who I also believe is a Scorpio, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so she is cast in some ways as this virginal Mary role, and we know this. You know this in the film, okay? Well, you will know it in the film, and it doesn't take much to figure it out. So we have this virginal character who's not supposed to have a child, just like Mary was supposed to not have a virgin birth, and it throws everything on Earth into a major conundrum. That the equation for synthetic biology just gets completely turned upside down. And there's a sub-theme in the movie of revolution. Of course, there has to be revolution, right? There has to, and these are the oppressed replicants. Now, it's interesting because Blade Runner 2049 was produced by Bud Yorkin, of all people. And Ridley Scott also produced, and Denis Villeneuve directed the film. And Bud Yorkin, I don't know if you know much about Bud Yorkin, but Bud Yorkin was behind the transformation of television in the 1970s. He and Norman Lear were the producers of shows like Maude and Sanford and Son and Freddie and the Man, and in a whole host and variety of comedies. I think Good Times was a York and Lear production. And so these were comedies, situation comedies, that wound up replacing shows right around 1968, 69, which were pretty much shows that were created for middle America. You know, shows like Green Acres and the Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction and My Three Sons. I mean, it was this kind of very, white bread example of America. And then a young guy by the name of Brandon Tartikoff came in. Brandon Tartikoff would wind up eventually becoming a producer for NBC. Brandon Tartikoff came in and he staged what's called the Great Purge in television. All that programming went bye-bye. And so Yorkin and Lear were brought in to create essentially liberal and progressive programming. And we all laughed at those, All in the Family as another classic example of a York and Lear production. We all laughed at those sitcoms, but if we go back in time and look at them, we can clearly see that Yorkin and Lear were reshaping the psychology and the collective emotional network of the United States of America. You're getting us to laugh at ourselves and getting us to, in some ways, embrace what we would call liberal or progressive or ideals of diversity. Now, I used to love Sanford and Son. It was one of my favorite shows. I loved Red Fox. I thought it was great. And I went back and I watched a few Sanford and Son episodes. I got to tell you, they just weren't that funny to me anymore. I mean, I was a 13, 14-year-old kid growing up in California, and I thought, wow, this is great, man. This is kind of like cool and cutting edge, but it really wasn't all that cool and all that cutting edge, to be honest. I mean, Now it's not. In fact, you can see that there are these strange kinds of, I don't know, morality tales that are being worked out, and not always in a way that was all that balanced. Let's put it that way. Okay. So Bud Yorkin is behind Blade Runner. He's one of the producers behind. So why would Bud Yorkin be so invested in Blade Runner? I think this is a really interesting question. Well, it's because Blade Runner gives us a vision of the future, and the vision of the future is happening right now. That we are probably living with replicants, we're living with clones, and we are living with people who are about to be, or already are, synthetically modified. Because Jared Leto's character, Ninian Wallace, the guy who creates all these new replicants, is completely modified. He can jack these chips into himself. So, so what's happening is that we're being prepared. This is what science fiction does. It prepares us. It is predictive programming. And everything from retinal scanning, biometrics, jacked in and synthetic humans, or humans that are jacked in and becoming this kind of fusion between the human and this organic and synthetic biology. And then, of course, the replicants themselves, because what are we doing throughout most of the film? We're identifying with these characters who aren't even human. And in fact, there's one character who's a hologram. And Ryan Gosling's character, Kay, has a very loving, touching, and intimate relationship with a hologram. So now we find ourselves bonding emotionally with an android and a hologram. And I don't even know if there's any real humans in this movie. I mean, they're portrayed by the actors. I think maybe the only real human in the film might be Madam, who's a police captain or sergeant who's played by Robin Wright, Sean Penn's ex-wife. I think she might be human, although I don't know. I think she is. But most of the characters they're replicants, they're androids. So we're watching a movie that's really populated by androids. So why is this important? Well, it's the Gemini ascendant on the chart tonight, chart of the moment. So we're talking about it, and this whole idea of this reproduction. And on Friday's show, we were talking about robotoids, and we were talking about synthetic humans and clones. Let me bring you up another image from Blade Runner. This is really interesting because it gives you this sense of what's going on here. In terms of Gemini, it always comes up. The sign of Gemini always comes up, and I'll give you an example here. Okay, so these are two main characters. I've only got half here. But this is Sean Young, who plays Rachel from the first movie. Why did this get cut off? Bugs me. I guess it's cut off that way anyway. Anyway, Sean Young plays Rachel in the first film. And here is Jared Leto's assistant. And they have a very similar kind of look, right? They look very, very similar in some ways. And Sean Young actually she shows up in the movie. She also has a double who shows up in the movie who's not her, but somebody else playing her. So again, there's this sense of, that there's the Sean Young character. She shows up. There's the Edward James Olmos character. He shows up. Hold on a second. Yeah. Then there is the Harrison Ford character. So we have two sets, right? We have the set from Blade Runner from the 1980s, and we have them in Blade Runner in 2017. And by the way, Edward James Olmos is almost unrecognizable. It's amazing how old he can look in this movie. It's kind of mind-blowing. But anyway, they're part of it, right? So there's two of them. There's the old one from the first film, and then the old one in the current film, or the younger version and the older version. And then there's this woman who is the assistant of Jared Leto, Ninian Wallace, and then Mary Sean Young as Rachel, who also shows up in the film as well. Now, what's fascinating, here's where we get to, and I'm going to do my best to not bring in the spoiler alert. But, okay, this character who is the person that is this quote-unquote messiah in some ways, or this person who's going to change the world because they're going to liberate, it's going to liberate the rest of these, replicants. It's the rebellion of the replicants. I mean, are the replicants millennials? Is that what they are? I'm wondering, because there's this theme of revolution inside of the movie. Does that theme have to be there? I don't know. I think they probably could have done the movie without the revolutionary theme being broached. But we know that look, Bud Yorkin and his wife produced this movie. They didn't write the script, but they also didn't get into the movie just so they can have their name associated with it. That they have their own skin in the game, that they believe, I'm sure, that there is some kind of socially connective blueprint inside of this movie that they could then transpose into the time that we live in, because once a lefty, always a lefty, really. Let me bring in this chart. Let me see if I can find it over here, because this is an interesting. Okay. This is a pivotal point in the movie. Hold on. I don't want to give it away. I have to change the name of it. Here we go. What's fascinating about Blade Runner is the date that the character that I'm referring to is born on. Oops, didn't want that. Hold on. Okay. Here's that chart. I don't know why things are getting cut off tonight. It's totally weird. It's totally weird. It's like technology is rebelling against me. I had a hell of a time on my show the other day. Why is that happening? I gotta figure this out. Hold on. You see this? Yeah, that's weird. It's for some reason it's getting cut off. That didn't get cut off. Let me do this. We got to see the whole chart. This is not acceptable. Not acceptable. Let me go into my account here. Okay, let me see if I can grab this and put it back up on the show here. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, okay. Let me just do this. All right. Because we just can't do half a chart. What kind of astrologer would I be? Alright, which one is this? It's 18095. Where we go? The RGW. it's not showing up. This is not cool, man. No, cool. Let's try this one. Is this? No. 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 That's it. Okay, there we go. So for whatever reason, we just, let's do that. Okay, so that way you don't know who it is. All right. So there's a character in Blade Runner who has a birth date. This is the character that everything kind of pivots on. Okay. Oh, this is really interesting. Wow. Oh, wow. This is a trip. This is totally a trip. Okay. So, this character was born on 6/10/2021. This is the chart for 6/10/2021. Okay? 6/10/2021. Now, this character does not mix with the public in general. In fact, they're sequestered from everybody else in the movie. And I did this because I rectified the chart, okay? Because this character, if there's ever a 12th house character, this character is it. And look at all the planets in Gemini. Sun, Mercury, Moon, new moon in Gemini, true node in Gemini. And what are we talking about? We're talking about a replicant here, right? And a replicant is like, well, it's a recreation of a human. It's the aspect of Gemini. And I don't want to tell you too much about this character because I don't want to blow the movie for you, okay? But I'm just telling you right now, when you see the movie, if you haven't seen it already, you know who this person is. This person has all those planets in Gemini. All of them in Gemini in the 12th house. So, and of course, I rectified the chart. But what's fascinating about this chart, okay, I didn't see this before, was that this person does not have a lot of contact with the outer world. Hello, look at Venus and look at Mars. There's nothing there. I mean, there's some aspects with Venus going down, trining Jupiter, sextiling Uranus, and you've got a Mars trine Uranus. But look across from Mars. There's no personal connection with Venus and Mars, you know, and this person is, and you figure this out pretty quickly in movies, so I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but this person is the daughter of Harrison Ford, okay? I'm just telling you, you're gonna figure it out. I'm not telling you anything that you won't know about the movie because you're all smart, right? You're all smart. But look, there's no connection with the father. Venus conjuncting the sun? No. Anything with the sun? No. What about Saturn? Absolutely not. There's no Venus connection. There's no relationship to the sun or Saturn. Fascinating stuff. Let me tell you. And what's at the apex of the chart, at least in the rectified chart that I have here? It's Neptune. Neptune on the midheaven. God, Neptune's still going to be in Pisces in 2021. Of course, Saturn is in Aquarius in 2021, and Pluto is still hanging out in Capricorn in 2021. What can you say? Neptune's such a long time. What is it? It's at 29 degrees. Is that right? 23. 23. Well, at least it'll be off my south node by then, thank God. But so what does this mean for this individual born on the 10th of this June in 2021, at the time that I have rectified it, only because of this person's station in life? It means that they use their imagination, Neptune, imagination, and the Mars trine with the imagination, the 29th degree of Cancer. And you will see this in the movie. This is one of the weirdest things I've ever kind of stumbled across in a film, or a character in a movie, and you dial up the chart of a character in a movie that doesn't even exist really. Which video? Hold on, somebody just sent me something. What's this? Interrupting my train of thought. Longitude and latitude. Okay. All right. Oh, I like Christopher Knowles, by the way. No, I like Christopher Knowles. I don't know if you're actually listening, Joe. I guess this is from yesterday. I like Christopher Knowles. Who's this? People always send me stuff. Okay. Anyway, I was in the midst of a major epiphany here. But anyway, I've never done it. I've never cast a chart for a character in a movie who doesn't really exist, and yet the strange thing about this character is that it somehow relates to the chart. It's kind of mind-blowing, to be honest with you. And look, there's no fire in this chart. There's no fire at all. Why? Well, because it's the chart. But what's fascinating is that this person has a compromised immune system. And one of the things that we need for our immune system is fire. So we can fire off our white blood cells and have them go attack all the nasty little microbes and bacteria. So this is fascinating. Fascinating chart. Anyway, I just wanted to share it with you. I'm probably going to write more about this on the website because it's a super interesting chart as it relates to Blade Runner and this 2049 and this 6/10/21 birth date, without telling you who the character is. Okay, why don't we do a couple more charts and then we'll probably get on out of here because a lot of you are probably tired. Why is she sending me stuff while I'm doing my show? I don't know why this happens. I'm going to have to shut Skype off. There it is. Okay. So let's bring up another chart, shall we? Let's do that. Now, these are people that are kind of born here and now. Let's see if I can find their image. One of which is very important so you see the image. Where is she? It bothers me when I... Hold on a second here. Almost there. Oh. Come on. Here we go. Okay, so let me do the freaky one first. I'll do the freaky one first. Okay. This is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. And this guy, actually, look at him. Look at those eyebrows. So this is a special ops guy. He is the head of the Temple of Set. And I'm going to bring up his chart. It's actually his birthday tomorrow. So we're going to bring his chart up. Have a look at this guy's chart. Here we go. So this is Michael Aquino's chart. Now, I mean, just take a look at this. This gives you a sense as to where our armed forces are. And remember that the armed forces, if you go back into the Navy, back in the 1950s, that Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and even Robert A. Heinlein, they were all, I believe Heinlein was in the Navy too. L. Ron Hubbard was naval intelligence, and he was tasked with becoming buddies with Jack Parsons so that the Navy could learn more about Parsons' magical powers. So that gives you some idea as to kind of what goes on inside of the armed forces. And of course they gave us Men Who Stare at Goats and the whole Super Soldier and Project Grill Flame and all the stuff that they've been into for a long time. Well, Michael Aquino is the head of the Temple of Set. He was the head of the Temple of Set while he was a member of the United States Army. And he was also very much involved in psychic and psychological warfare and training. And I have a sneaking suspicion that he was connected to, and friends with, but also professionally connected with Tiger Woods' father. Because Tiger Woods' father had a double degree in psychology and was also part of a psychological unit in the U.S. Army, and they were both stationed in the same part of the world, which was the Bay Area. And Tiger Woods, of course, was a mind control experiment. So here is this guy, Michael Aquino, and you can look him up online. He's an interesting character. So here's his chart. I'm just trying to find out if there's anything unusual or interesting about his chart. Well, he's got a lot of Scorpio in his chart. He's got Mercury, Mars, Jupiter. And Scorpios tend to be into kind of darker material, supernatural material, you know, the occult. I mean, that's part of Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio rising. I'm not an occultist, but look, I do astrology. I've investigated shamanism. I've taken in theogens. You know, I've kind of gone down an esoteric path. Part of the Scorpio trip. And he's got these 3 planets, and he's got Jupiter in Scorpio, which is going to be very prominent at his midheaven. So he wants to expand into the world. Mars is military, right? But it's not just any military, it's scorpionic military. Now, clearly with the square to Pluto and Leo and Saturn and Leo, these forces are at odds with the dominant paradigm. They're at odds with dominant leadership. So I don't necessarily think that it was always easy for Michael Aquino to be in the Army doing what he's doing or did. I'm sure he went up against some significant challenges at times. And, you know, this square to Saturn and Pluto is very intense. It's like, you know, it's that kind of seething, roiling energy, that intensity that is, you know, firing off in the chart with the square. His sun is in the 9th house, and Neptune's up there, so in his own way, I probably wouldn't want, I mean, in his own way, the guy's kind of a teacher, right? Sun in the 9th house, consciousness, trining Uranus, but it's different, right? It's not your typical kind of trip or school that he's running in the ninth house, because it's trined with Uranus, and it's in Gemini. Hey, there's Gemini again, and there's the true node in Gemini. So it gives him an unusual, different, radical cast, which he's actually quite okay with. He doesn't have any cardinal energy in his chart, which is fascinating, except for, what is that? What's cardinal? He's got, his Venus is in Sag. He's got that cardinal ascendant. That's about it, right? Cardinal, oh, moon. He's got the moon in Cancer. That's unusual. It's a very sensitive moon, that moon in Cancer, and it's trining all those Scorpio planets. So he's got some magnetism with those water signs and trine with one another. It's a very kind of simplistic chart in some ways. Like, this guy's focus and emphasis is the world. It's like contacting, changing and transforming the world through psychological and occult technologies, squaring off against Pluto Saturn, which is authority, right? Leo, authority. So either it's against God or it's against some form of way of doing things, which it might be regimented. You know, this guy is not about regimentation. He's actually in conflict with regimentation. And it's all up in here, the upper part of the chart. Venus is in an interesting place. It's at the final degrees of Scorpio. It's not in Sagittarius. Venus is, what is that? No, it is Sag. It's 0 Sag. You know, people have Venus and Sagittarius tend to be very philosophical. You ever have a lover with Venus and Sagittarius? They tend to wax very philosophically about love and commitment. Let's put it that way. And some of it's great. And some of it feels like, hey, come on down from the mountain. Come on down from the mountain. Let's go have some ice cream and take our clothes off. I'm sorry. And sometimes they won't be opposed to that. Trust me. I mean, it's just a, it's just a vibe. I mean, sometimes Sagittarius comes off as being kind of know-it-all-ish, and Venus and Sag is it's wonderful. I mean, it's a very expansive kind of philosophical quest for love, if you know what I'm saying. And he's got Capricorn rising, so very serious character, this Michael Aquino. Am I right? What has he got going on right now? He's got that Sun at 22. So he's going to have his Jupiter return. Oh boy, maybe it's the second coming of Michael Aquino. It's going to happen in a few days. Keep your eyes on social media or the internet. Maybe this guy's going to pop up, not just because it's his birthday tomorrow, but just over the course of the next couple of days. See what happens. He might cross your path, at least digitally. All right, why don't we get him out of there? Let's move you out of there. Yes. And let's move this out of here. Let's remove that. Yes. All right. Let's do one more chart for tonight, and I'll check in with everybody, probably all 25 of you tonight. This is, here we go. I'm going to pull up the chart first this time versus the image. Okay. So, all right, let me bring up the image now. Let's do this. I don't have, well, I guess I have something to say about this chart. Or else I wouldn't be bringing it up. Okay, that chart belongs to this woman. That's Nico. Now, I'm sure some people might say, well, Nico is actually a man. Well, you never know. because she did come out of the Warhol effect, who were women were men and men were women and girls were boys and boys were girls. There's a lot of cross-dressing and gender mod going on during the Warhol era, but we all knew Nico to be very feminine, and but she had a very deep voice. You know, she sang like Marlene Dietrich on Barbiturates. That's what Nico was. And she was beloved by people. She didn't play very well, but she has such presence, you know. She has that Aries rising. And look at that striking red hair with, you know, the Aries rising. What's fascinating about Nico is that she died in 1988 in Ibiza. She got into a bike accident and she suffered head wounds. So it was 1988, and that's when, let's see, Saturn was in Capricorn in 1988. Pluto was in Scorpio in 88. Yeah, so let's see, Pluto would have been, let's see, early Scorpio. So it would have been right around where her Mercury is. And then Saturn was just going into Capricorn, so that would have put it right on her midheaven. So she had Saturn on her midheaven, squaring, was it a Saturn square? Let's check it out. Just see here. There we go. So Saturn was at 13. So Saturn's just beginning to square Saturn in 1988. And I just think it was interesting that she died from a head wound, and she's in Aries. And of course, she had a period of time where she had both silver hair and black hair. I think this is as close to her natural hair as a redhead. She found fame and fortune in a band, that band being the Velvet Underground, and we see that she has Jupiter in the 4th house. And one of the things, the 11th house, and one of the things that the 11th house can represent are groups, right? Not just groups like the Rosicrucians or the Freemasons or Little League, which is a group, but also musical groups. And so she would expand in a lot of ways, personally, through her association with a group, in this case, the Velvet Underground. And the Velvet Underground was always ahead of its time. So Jupiter in Aquarius in the 11th house is quite fitting and apropos. And of course, there's the trine to the Sun and Mercury in her chart. What's also really interesting about Nico is that she took on paramours. Like one of her lovers, when she was in New York City, living in New York City, was a very young Jackson Browne, who would later relocate and move to Los Angeles. A lot of people don't know that Jackson Browne was kind of a satellite in the Warhol scene, of all things. But collaboration would have been very important, and people like John Cale and Lou Reed, who would have helped her create, craft, and write songs, would play a large role in her life. And you can see that with the Mercury-Sun conjunction and the trine to Jupiter. That's just the kind of the software of connecting with a band and having partnerships and working on things together, right? Now, she's got Venus in Sagittarius, and she has a trine with the moon. So the moon is late here at 26, and Venus is early at 1, so that's a 5-degree orb, which made her kind of compelling. You know, when you have a Venus-Moon trine, and Moon is in Cancer, even though it's late Cancer, it's got that feminine, magnetic kind of quality, even though I'm sure somebody out there has done a YouTube video on her being a man, but I don't think she was. And then she has Uranus in Taurus. It's interesting because we have Uranus coming back to Taurus, and trine Mars and trine Neptune in Virgo. And Uranus is always about sort of change and revolution and science and the future. So she was a bit futuristic, not only with the Jupiter in Aquarius trying to Sun Mercury, but the Uranus trying to Mars in her chart as well. And then she has this inconjunct with Mars and Neptune. To me, that's kind of like, how do you become practical? You know, this is a creative aspect with Mars-Neptune conjunction, but also how do you somehow channel the energy of the group, or you know, how is the creative energy of the individual channeled into the group and brought in? You know, if she didn't have that trine with Sun Mercury, I doubt if she'd be in a group, because it would be almost like a foreign experience for her with that inconjunct. Pluto, Sun, Moon, Pluto conjunction, very intense emotions, square Sun Mercury. So you can hear it in their voice when she sings. And there might have also been some very intense connections with other people, you know, through her emotions that would have been, how should we say this, Persephonic in some degree. And she's got her true node in Scorpio. True node in Scorpio. I don't think Michael Aquino's true node was in Scorpio. True node in Scorpio. What sign was Andy Warhol? Andy Warhol, I believe, was a Cancer. So I'm thinking that Warhol would have been right in her 4th house. This is her German chart. I didn't relocate her chart to New York City, which would have been significant, no doubt. Sun-Saturn opposition, again, that's kind of the flight away from the father, maybe the flight away from the fatherland. Saturn being the father, the Sun being the essence of the individual, and then Venus-Jupiter square. Wow. Venus-Jupiter square, let's just say she would be open, right? Especially with Venus in Sag. I think she was an open lover. I don't know anything about her. I mean, her outside of her relationships and connections with people like John Cale and Jackson Brand and Lou Reed. I don't know anything about her love life. But with that Venus-Jupiter square, seems like she'd be very open, but secretive about how open she would be. Did she have a relationship with Morrison? I'm not sure. Maybe somebody can look that up. Anyway, there's Nico, flaming red hair, Aries rising, died of a head wound in Ibiza, and interesting person, great unmistakable voice. All right, let's bring her out of there. I mean, there's, you know, in some ways it's like you just can't watch a person like Nico grow old. That'd be weird. Yeah. Okay, so we've been on here for a good hour and 30 minutes. Let me just check in with the live stream, see if anybody's in there up, actually listening to this. You got anything going on here? Let me just see. Oh, Maria Renault had a trying day. Aquino is a ghoul. Yes, he is. Max Spears claims he's being. I don't doubt it. I believe that he's not benign. I agree, Daniel. I was being cautious. He's not benign at all. Let's see. I'm going to put that Trump show up on BitChute, by the way. Oh, Tom Robbins. That's a good. I like that. Yeah, Jan. I'm going to do. I'm going to put that Trump show up on BitChute. No, the Rothschild Vineyards were not hit, for sure. Red hot. Weather warfare is alive. There's Judy. Hi, Judy. So I think we're winding down here, but a few of you are still around. There's 30 of you. Now, oh, here's Christine. Hi, Christine. Yeah, Daniel, he's not benign. Trust me, he's not. I was being, how shall I say this? I was being cautious. Let's put it that way. Being cautious. And I hope I wasn't selling Michael Aquino as some New Age teacher. No, not at all. Not at all. Not with all that Scorpio at the top of the chart. Not like that. Scorpio's not bad, trust me, but anyway. Link on Facebook. Can you send a link for the Trump show? Yeah, let me. So I need to edit the Trump show because I put in a bad piece of audio, and so I want to edit it and I'll put it up on BitChute. And I'll do that tomorrow, so you guys will be able to grab that. And by the way, if you go to my Facebook link around the Trump video, Michelle Lanos sent a video of Trump being in the Virgin Islands, I think, at the same time he was in Puerto Rico. I haven't had a chance to actually look at that video, but you can go to my Facebook page and check it out, or maybe I'll put the link on the BitChute upload. Hey, I just want to let everybody know. Yes, I thank you, Dan. Daniel, I don't go looking for trouble, but if trouble finds me, hey, look, it's something we all have to deal with. So I have a new thing that I am offering on my website. It is called, I finally put it together, launched it yesterday. It is called the 11th House Club. And there are 4 levels that you can check in with this. It starts off at one level, which starts at $125, and you get all kinds of goodies. All kinds of goodies, like readings and charts and reports and all kinds of stuff. And then it goes all the way up to like a super duper level, where I will actually come to your place and do readings for you and 4 of your friends, and I'll do the Sunday night live stream at your house. That's at the super level. So there's 4 levels. Check it out. There's some great value. I think my favorite level might be the Jovian level, where you get 4 quarterly check-ins, 45-minute sessions. You also get my Astrological course as well. Anyway, go to my website. It's called 11th House Club. If you're interested in it, and you're interested in sort of engaging with me on an astrological level, there's plenty of options there, some of which are very affordable. And it helps me, I help you, and we have a symbiotic relationship, or a 360-degree win, as Alex Jones likes to say. Anything else? Yes, guess what I'm doing this week? I'm going to be hanging out with Regina Meredith on Friday, and we're going to be doing a Zoom show together. So Regina is starting to create her own spin-off from Gaia. So we're going to be doing a Zoom session on Friday. I don't think it'll be live, but she'll probably launch it the next week. And then the following week, which is the 22nd, or the 28th rather, I'll be doing a webinar over on Astrological all about Saturn and Capricorn. So we'll really get into that. It's going to be an interesting one. Okay, so it's 12:35 here, Central Standard Time. For you folks on the West Coast, you're just getting tucked into bed, and wherever you are, whatever country, whatever city, state, whatever dimension, I wish you nothing but the best. Sweet dreams, great REM sleep, and I'll be back tomorrow with 15 minutes of flame, and maybe we'll get into California a bit more. Okay, have a wonderful night, have a wonderful week. I'll see everybody out there on Spreaker tomorrow. Okay, good night.